Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Nicole and I post weekly vlogs here on YouTube every Monday. This, however, is an extra video this week because I am going to be answering your questions about relocating to Florida and how I became a Disney local. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I do post every day on TikTok and Instagram, so be sure to follow me over there as well. I asked you on Instagram all of your questions about relocating to Florida. You asked them, I'm going to answer them. For those of you that do not know, my family and I relocated to Florida just over a year ago. I am married and I do have 2 kids. I have a daughter that is 16 and a son that is 11. We moved from Rochester, New York, which, if you're unfamiliar with New York, it is a huge state. It's not just the city. We did not live in the city. We're actually from the suburbs. The first question: why did you relocate? Quality of life. I think that that's the best answer. If you ask my husband, he's going to say weather, but I think that weather has a lot to do with quality of life. The area in New York that we were from was going downhill pretty drastically. Frankly, there was not a whole lot to do. It was getting really just violent and scary, and you couldn't even go to the local mall. And as my kids were starting to get older, I wasn't comfortable with really them leaving the house without me or going anywhere, because it just consistently seemed like one thing after another was happening. And I felt like I am better off just staying home and not doing anything because it was safer. And I really started to realize I don't want to live this way. That's not the way to live. On top of that, 7 months out of the year, the weather being shit, seasonal depression is real, and gray skies all the time, everything dying, it gets really depressing. And the combination of the weather being so depressing and you not wanting to leave your house for that reason, but also not wanting to leave your house for the fact that A, there's nowhere to go, there's not really anything to do, and B, it's not necessarily super safe too. I just thought, why are we here? What are we doing? And that's really, I think, where the conversation started to come from with my husband and I. And ultimately, we just thought that it was the best decision for us, for our family. And we decided that we were serious. And it took about 6 years of planning to relocate before we officially did. So, okay, second question. Was it hard to transition from 4 seasons to just the one? My answer is no. And it's actually funny. I was just having this conversation with someone the other day, because fall has always been my favorite season, but I think it's more of the aesthetic than anything else. Even where I'm from, you experience 4 seasons, but you kind of don't. And fall is the one that is the most short-lived, ironically. We'll call it fall, but it's only fall weather for like a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then everything around you is already dead. So yeah, sure, the trees are going to change colors, but you have about a week of that before they just fall off of the tree altogether and the tree just completely looks dead. And you get about a week between it's been summer, so it's really hot, to suddenly a temperature drop. Great, it feels like fall. And then right after that, literally within a week or two, it's freezing. So you go from it's hot as hell to, ooh, it's finally sweater weather. Oh shit, it's actually bundle the hell up because it's soul crushing cold outside. I feel like you don't really truly get fall. You just are able to wear your cute sweaters, but you're cold in everything that you're doing. So you kind of have to bundle up, and it really defeats the purpose. Aside from that, I don't miss winter at all. I would be completely content not having to deal with snow or the cold ever again, or at least for quite some time before I have to experience that again. I think I've experienced enough of it for the last 31 years that I don't need to experience it anytime soon. And even in Florida, especially last year, I noticed we did not actually have seasonal depression at all. Never occurred. My husband always got it worse than I did, but we didn't experience it. And frankly, Florida does get cold. Last year was not just a fluke, because there have been times where John and I have come to Disney for vacation for New Year's or at the very end of the year or the very beginning of the year, and it has been very cold. I have been in Disney where I have seen people in winter jackets, mittens, hats, the whole nine, because it does get very cold. Last year, we experienced it, especially firsthand, where there were at least 2, maybe 3 months, I'm kind of losing track, but I mean, I wasn't leaving the house without being in a sweater or a hoodie. So I feel like to some extent, I at least get a break from the heat, and for me, that's enough of a seasonal shift. All right, next question. How bad do the hurricanes get? Only thing that makes me hesitate moving to Orlando. Actually, I think that Orlando or Central Florida is probably the best place to be during hurricane season if you're going to move to Florida, because last year, I don't think that any hurricanes actually came through last year. The storms here do get crazy. The thunder and lightning is wild. I love me a good thunderstorm, but they are crazy. I've never experienced any sort of storm like this in New York. There's obviously reasons for it, and a lot of it has to do with the weather, specifically down in Florida, but those are wild. So if you don't like thunder and lightning, then just beware. But I actually was vacationing in Disney years ago during a hurricane, and it was crazy stormy that night, and obviously I was in Disney, so that has a lot to do with this next part. But when we woke up in the morning, everything was totally normal and everything was cleaned up, and it didn't even look like a storm had hit. Frankly, I don't have too much of a fear of hurricanes in Central Florida. I guess we'll see, but so far, no real experience with it. Next question. How did you decide on the area you chose? This was hard. This was not easy. I think 6 years of planning to relocate bought us a lot of time. Obviously, I wasn't looking into and researching every day within those 6 years, but there was a lot of planning that took place. A lot of it did have to do with schools, because like I said, I do have 2 kids, and the school district that we were in New York was one of the best. I did love the school district. It's the same district that my husband and I went to school in. So I think to a reason that we hesitated even for so many years was because we were trying to ensure, we wanted to be almost 100% that this was the right move for our family, and school was a big factor. It took a lot of research when it came to looking up schools, because it's like comparing apples to oranges, literally. I think maybe with AI it could potentially be easier now, but obviously I didn't really have that. There's a lot to look into. There's a lot of schools in Florida that offer certain programs. There's just a lot of different things that you can look into from a district to district basis. Every area that I looked in, the first thing that I was actually looking for was the schools, because if the schools weren't going to be good enough, then the area wasn't going to be good enough. Ironically, when we first started looking into relocating, we were looking south of Disney. And no hate, no shade, obviously, to anybody that is south of Disney. But with my personal experience, I'm very, very glad that we did not end up south of Disney. I think that the reason is actually going to go into quite a few other questions that had come to me, but we didn't decide not to do south of Disney until we actually traveled here and looked at the houses, the builders, the area. What really sealed the deal for us as to not be south was I-4, really. To be completely honest, we were consistently traveling on I-4, of course, anytime that we came to Disney, but that was pretty much the only experience that we truly had, aside from one other vacation when we drove it ourselves from St. Pete. But we had traveled to Florida to look at a builder, and the traffic alone just to get to that development was absurd. And my daughter just turned 16. So obviously she's going to be driving soon. And at the time of looking at where to live, we were like, oh, if she wants to go to Disney with her friends, or if she wants to pretty much go anywhere, she's going to have to take I-4. Not only is it dangerous just for everybody in general, but it would be especially dangerous for her. So between that, traffic, we were like, I don't think that this is the best move to make. That was really defeating, because it was that trip in particular where we were defeated by the builders that we were looking at. We were defeated that we couldn't find what we wanted within the budget that we wanted to end up in, and the traffic having to take I-4, especially with how often we anticipated going to Disney. And with our kids on the road, it just didn't feel like it was right. And it was hard. And I'll never forget, because I appreciate moments like this, especially I think my future self truly appreciates these moments. We had a really crappy meeting with the builder, and we immediately left and went to Disney Springs, and we got Starbucks over by the Starbucks in Springs that is right behind the hot air balloon. And we were sitting outside, and we were just, my husband and I, having the whole conversation about, this sucks because the area that we had been looking in that we thought was it wasn't it. The builder was not it. Nothing was really going the way that we had hoped. And I felt very like I said, defeated, but also kind of heartbroken, because I felt like maybe John would lose interest now in trying to pursue this, right? Because I kind of just felt like it was like bad news after bad news, or nothing was really aligning the way we had hoped, right? And so we finished off the rest of our trip here. We were staying on Disney property, so we just enjoyed the fact that we were in Disney still, but I was sad. But what was interesting is I was trying to still be very optimistic, because I was like, this wasn't right, but we'll figure it out. We'll find what's right. And so I was trying not to be super bummed out, because I felt like this wasn't something that you can just rush. And that's the great thing about my husband, is that he can ground me in those situations. I'm very, very spontaneous. When I want something, I go for it. I go, 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 go. It doesn't matter. Nobody can get in my way. I'm just going to go get it. But sometimes it's not always the best decision, or it's not the best move. And so he kind of has to rein me in. And he does that very well. But in this instance, I was, he was doing that alongside. I was trying to kind of regulate myself. This is a really big deal. We're completely relocating our family. We've been spending a lot of time looking into this. Let me not rush it. Let's do what's going to end up being right for our family. And we left that vacation, and it was only, I think, 4 to 5 weeks later, we ended up finding the area and the builder that we ended up in. And it just so happens to be north of Disney. Now that we're here, it 100% stars aligned. It was meant to be like this, and I think maybe that's why in that moment at Starbucks, I wasn't so upset, because now when we go to that Starbucks, that memory plays over and over in my head, which I think just makes me more grateful for where we are right now. And so really, that's how we found the area that we ended up in. It's just a lot of research. It's a lot of going and visiting and figuring it out sort of for yourself. What is going to work best for you, your family, what feels right, what doesn't feel right. What are you going for? What are you looking for, especially when it comes to builders or homes, areas, schools. There's so many factors, but everyone's a little bit different. What you're looking for might be entirely different than what I was looking for, right? So it's sort of one of those things where you can get recommendations from other people, but you have to do what's right for you, and only you can decide that. Next question. Since living there, what's the longest period of time you've taken between trips to Disney? I think the longest that we didn't come to Disney since moving here was a week, and that was only because we went back to New York for a week. Since then, we go to Disney 2 to 3 times per week. I think the only time we've done one day out of the week has been if we're sick, if someone's sick, and so we don't go. Other than that, it's pretty much just our norm now, 2 to 3 times a week. I think we average 2 a little bit more. We try to do a weekday, and then we try to do a weekend, but sometimes it just works out where we get at least 3 days in, which is awesome. Well, it's summer now, but typically they're in school. I work all day, so there's a lot that goes on. So if I could go every day, I would, probably, but I can't. Next question. How bad are the bugs? As a person who doesn't like spiders, are they a problem? If you asked me this question a year ago, I might have a different answer. It depends on the time of the year. So spiders in particular, I have come across a few large spiders. Most of them have been outside, so I don't personally see them. My husband will catch them a lot when mowing the lawn or just being outside. I'm not typically going out there. I will tell you this though, in New York, it was far more common that people would go outside barefoot and walk around. I'm not saying I was one of those people, but people do that. Here, I wouldn't even think of it. I will not set foot in my backyard without shoes on ever. There are bugs everywhere. Just wear your shoes. Spiders in my house, though, I haven't seen anything too crazy. There was an incident a few weeks ago, though. I have, if you know, I have a lanai and I have a screen door. And it was late, it was dark. I was letting my dog out. I think it was, I don't even know if the time really matters. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And I opened up the screen door to let him out. And I wasn't looking down, I was looking out. It all happened so fast. I felt something very quickly scurry over my foot, my bare foot, mind you. And I felt every single leg over my foot. I never even looked down though. I felt it. That was enough. I jumped up, I started screaming, and I jumped onto the lanai furniture for my husband, who we have a bug catcher. So here's the thing. You can't squish bugs, well, especially spiders. You can't squish spiders here because they usually have sacks on them. So God forbid you squish a spider and that sack breaks. And then like 30 spiders might crawl out of there. So you can't do that. So I have a friend that burns everything. I'm not trying to light anything on fire. So we did invest in a bug catcher. I recommend this bug catcher to everyone, regardless of where you live. I will actually tag this on my LTK because I feel like everybody should have this. So this bug catcher is amazing because you can literally, you place it over the bug, the bottom of it will shut and then the bug is trapped in there. We use it for every bug. For spiders, John will literally, those big guys will literally drive down the road and drop it off. But yeah, so that night, that spider, it was a spider and it was pretty large. It was pretty gross. That was pretty bad. Other than that, love bugs are huge in Florida twice a year. I can't remember now. We just had them. I want to say about like a month and a half ago. I think that they're supposed to come back around September. They're freaking disgusting. They serve no purpose and they're everywhere. You have to be really cautious of them because there will be so many of them that will sit on your car, and if you don't wash your car and get them off, they can actually take the paint off of your car. So you learn a lot about the different bugs in Florida. Another big one that really grosses me out, they're called palmetto bugs, but they're basically in the cockroach family. So they're not big ass cockroaches, which I have only seen the big ones at Disney, like I think 2 vlogs ago, maybe it was my first vlog. I was at Magic Kingdom and I was videotaping something, and out of the corner of my eye I saw like a giant ass something crawling, and I was like, oh my god, it's a cockroach, and it was literally like this big. Those are, jinx knock on wood, not in my home, but the little version, like palmetto bugs are. And they're really gross, but at least they're small. I won't get them with the bug catcher, but John does. I think those are really the worst that I have personally seen thus far. I don't do bugs. I really don't do bugs. Like I can't even do ants. Like if I see ants, I'm just immediately crawling out of my skin. So I'm very about bugs. When we first moved here, I was so scared of bugs. I only wore slippers and socks everywhere. I was too nervous to even be barefoot. But now I'm barefoot now. I've acclimated, I don't know, but it's not really as much in my head as it used to be. Next question. Are taxes and insurance as bad as I hear? We're planning to relocate from North Carolina next year. My personal experience, truthfully, I don't think so. But I feel like I should slightly preface, again, I'm from New York. I am not from the city, but the entirety of New York State has really high prices. very high. The cost of living is high regardless of where you are. Taxes are out fucking outrageous in New York. Another reason actually that we moved. And before I answer this question, let me just say this. The house that we owned in New York, the taxes on that house were $7,000 a year, okay? The value of that house that we had in New York is half of what my house in Florida is. My taxes here are just over $8,000 a year. So just doing that math really quick for you. The value of my house in Florida is double what my house in New York was worth. But the taxes are almost the same. It doesn't add up, right? Like, and to be completely transparent and honest, like, I couldn't afford this house in New York because the taxes on this house in New York would have been astronomical. So I think that that's a really important thing to remember, is that I was already used to a higher cost of living. And so I have been asked that question before by other people, like, I've heard that it costs a lot to live in Florida, yada, yada. And I do think that there is a slight discrepancy between the cost of living in Florida and the typical household salary. I think living in New York, you are paid a little bit more. And so that kind of makes sense. Whereas I've heard in Florida, it's not quite like you can get paid a little bit less, but the cost of living is still high. So I think that in order to answer that question, it does kind of depend on where you're from. I was already used to the higher cost of living, and so that really hasn't fazed me. Insurance, my insurance is, I think, a few $100s more. Homeowners insurance is a few $100s more per year than it was in New York, which that was what everyone projected on us the most. I think that was such a big part of this move too, is if you start telling people that you want to move to Florida, maybe if you start telling people you want to move anywhere, but they will project all of their fears, all of the things that they have heard, any TikTok that they've ever seen, anything they've ever seen on the news, like everything will just be projected onto you. Every single fear that an individual has, they'll just push it right onto you the second that you say you want to do something. I think that just goes for anything, but especially when we said that we wanted to move to Florida. One of the biggest things that I heard was the insurance is going to be insane. We don't live on the water. So maybe if I were in Miami, maybe if I were in Tampa, I think, yes, there is definitely truth to that. But Central Florida, I haven't noticed that. So it's not an issue, or hasn't been. My bills also aren't astronomical. Again, thinking about how do these things make sense. I paid my energy bill today, and it was equivalent to what I was paying in New York. And my house in New York was smaller, a lot smaller than this house. So things just sort of don't make sense there. Then the tax part, again, coming from New York, I was paying crazy high taxes. So no, to me, they're better. But if you're in a state where taxes are low, then you'll probably feel it. So again, sort of where research comes into play, and sort of, especially when determining like your budget for a home or things of that nature, cost of living, things to consider. Next question, what are some areas you recommend looking in? Again, I really think it's personal preference. I really think that one of the best pieces of advice is, of course, to do outside research, but to absolutely visit the places that you intend to live. I think that was the most important thing that we did. Like I said earlier, if we had not come to that area that we were looking at initially, and we sort of just pulled the trigger virtually or, from New York, I think that this entire conversation would be different. So I do think that's super important. Again, because it really depends on the vibe that you're looking for, the type of area that you're looking for. I think another big thing too with the area that we chose is it's very much up and coming. It's a newer area. And so we feel like this is a good investment because the area is not completely developed yet. And again, I personally think that north of Disney is the way to go. I think it's less touristy. I think it has a little bit more of a, I get sort of, especially when I go into the little towns or like the downtown areas, more of that homey village vibe. That's my thing. That's what I like. I don't need to be in downtown Orlando. I don't need it to be crazy pop. I don't need a shit ton to do, right? Like I don't need that city feel. What I like is during Christmas time, I want to feel like I'm in a Hallmark movie. That's sort of my thing. That's what I like. I want an area that has small businesses and shops, and I can walk around and feel safe. And there's a bunch of restaurants or snack places, things like that. Coffee shops, especially local coffee shops. I love stuff like that. So that's my thing. That's not everybody's thing though. I also didn't want to be so close to Disney that I was living in the middle of a tourist attraction. I didn't want my neighbors to potentially be renting out their homes as Airbnbs. I didn't want that. Some people may not mind that. I just personally didn't. And so that's why we're a little bit further from Disney. Again, we're like 25, 30 minutes away, depending on the park that you're going to. Whereas, I mean, you could live 10 minutes from Disney, but I also didn't want to take I-4, right? Like, there's just factors. You just have to visit, you have to see things for yourself, and you have to see if it's fitting. Next question, does it feel too touristy? Is the traffic really that bad? Yes and no. Depends on the area. Like I said, if you are right outside of Disney, it's definitely touristy. And you'll feel it. And that also sort of goes along with the vibe that I'm referring to when you're determining sort of what's right for you in the area that you're moving to. So, for example, the area, again, south of Disney that we thought we wanted to be in, when we were driving to the builder in that community, it felt like a touristy drive. And John said that pretty quickly. He was like, oh, like, I don't know. Like it did. It felt super touristy. And I was kind of like, yeah, like so far I'm not loving the vibe. And then you get into the community, and obviously the community might feel slightly different. But again, the surrounding areas were very touristy. I didn't love that. And I think, yeah, if you especially are right outside of Disney, of course, the traffic does get really crazy. And like I said, if you're taking I-4 commonly, I don't think that I-4 isn't subject though to Disney. I-4 is it's very long. I usually get to Tampa and beyond. And so I think it's just a highway that is frequently utilized. And I think that it's a combination of people who live in Florida and tourists that are going to Disney or Tampa or the beach or whatever. So I think that definitely has a part of it. Also, other areas of Florida have definitely been like that as well. We have traveled to Deerfield, to Venice, to Tampa, and the traffic has been pretty crazy. And I remember too, when we just went to Venice with some of our friends who got married, they were living in Venice a few years ago, and they were saying that it's only getting progressively busier and that the traffic didn't used to be that bad. And I think that is a pretty common theme. I'm hearing that a lot. I'll be very honest with you guys. The area that I live in is not touristy. Because again, I think we're a little too north of Disney. Not to say that there's not tourists kind of up here, but I think that there's less. Also, the highway that I take to Disney is actually a toll road. I have no problem paying those tolls. I don't care. It's actually a straight shot. So I'm very close to the highway. So as soon as we leave our community, I drive up the road, I get right onto the highway, and it actually spits me right out of Disney. So the drive to Disney is a straight shot. It's so easy. There's no back roads at all that I have to take. And yes, I do pay tolls every time. I don't even know how much they are because I just have them come out. But I think it's totally worth it. I'm cool with it. I don't care. The traffic is not bad where I am. But again, I am in a newer area. So it's not to say that things won't change, especially as more houses get built, especially as the area that I'm in gets developed. Not to say that it won't change, but at least right now I'm just taking advantage of the fact that it's actually pretty quiet, and I love that. So I think it just sort of depends on the area that you're in. And I think, yeah, you should probably expect that there's going to be traffic. Next question is, what surprised you the most? I think that's a really good question. I think the first thing that surprised me the most is how quickly this felt like home. I think allowing for things to go wrong so that they can go right. I think taking time to make really big decisions is probably a big part of that, because like I said, I think if we had been a little bit more spontaneous, it wouldn't have worked out as well. But I will tell you that Central Florida in particular feels like home. And I'm trying to articulate this in a way that makes sense. Like I said, we recently were traveling to different areas of Florida for different events. And those areas of Florida, although gorgeous, of course, all of them were by a beach. But those areas to me were like, great. But I was also ready after a few days to just be home. And then we were driving, and as soon as we hit Central Florida, Orlando area, instantly, I could like feel it in my soul. I don't know, that sounds so corny, but it's true. It feels like home. And I think we've only lived here for just over a year, but we felt that way pretty quickly. And I think a lot of it does have to do with the fact that I very quickly turned this house into a home. Like, you know, I have a family, and it was a really big transition, and it was a really big deal to completely relocate to a place that we had never, you know, really been to, and we had only lived in one place, one house for so long. And so I very quickly wanted it to feel like home to all of us, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with it, but very quickly the entire area just felt like home, and we became very familiar with it. And I don't know, I think that actually has been one of the most surprising things, is that although I was hoping for that, that is in fact how it feels. I think the second part is how friendly people are. I think that was actually very surprising. I was really nervous before relocating because I made the mistake of joining Facebook groups of the areas that we would be in, and I shouldn't have done that, because Facebook is a really scary place, and the people that comment on posts are wild. And so many I was seeing about people relocating to Florida and calling, especially everybody up north, Yankees, and just talking so much shit on Facebook. And I remember I was a little like, everybody's gonna hate us. Like, that's sort of how I felt. And it's been completely opposite since being here. I think so many people here are in fact transplants, so they're from all over. But nonetheless, I don't know if it's because the weather is consistently beautiful. The sun is typically shining. Not today, it's very stormy, but it's a vibe, so I like it. But it'll probably be sunny tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's just, maybe that just makes people happier, but people are so nice, and not in a fake way. Like, you know when you watch those movies about people in the South and they're like so sweet and it's so over the top and yada yada, like, that is not what I mean. I mean, like, genuinely people are just happier, so they're just inherently nicer. I have always dreaded making certain phone calls. I have always dreaded the DMV, which in Florida is known as the tax collector. There's a lot of areas in New York that I have always dreaded, especially phone calls, because in New York, in my experience, You make a phone call and somebody is so quick to get you the hell off the phone. They don't care, right? They answer, what do you want? Literally, whatever, bye, that's it, right? Like, and it's so miserable, right? Like, everybody's always so miserable. And here, I was very surprised, and like, I had to find doctors. I had to find all new everything. And so I have to make phone calls, and I had to go to the tax collector to get my license and John's license. And everybody is so different. Everybody has always been pleasant thus far. I mean, obviously you'll encounter people who aren't happy, but majority of people are. I'll never forget making the first phone call to my kid's doctor's office, and the woman was so sweet and so helpful, to the point where I was trying to get off the phone because I thought, again, based off experience, like, answer the phone, get to the point, hang up, that's it. No, she went out of her way to give me extra information and talk about things, make sure all my questions were answered. And it was different. And so that was a really big surprise for me, a pleasant surprise, but I really like that. Next question, what do you miss the most about up north? I think the only answer right now is the family that I have left, I miss. I miss my nephews. I miss my in-laws. I miss my aunt, but she did just come to visit, so that's helpful. I don't have a whole lot up north anymore. And I think, aside from just some family members, more so on my husband's side than anything else, that is one of the biggest factors for me personally, I think, which felt like the universe forcing me out of New York. I felt like there wasn't anything left for me there anymore. I felt like sometimes, as selfish as it might sound, family or people aren't enough to keep you somewhere or to stop you from bigger opportunity and from living your life and ensuring that for you and your family, as in, your significant other and your kids, you are experiencing and providing the best quality of life. And a lot had happened, especially to me, but to my husband as well. But it really felt like within the last 2 years of living in New York, the universe was pushing us out so hard. And I think that probably helped with things too. I felt like every time I asked for a sign that we were doing the right thing, that we were moving in the right direction, I got it. And it kind of stung, obviously, but I think that ultimately it helped. So aside from family or people up north, I don't really miss anything right now. I feel like I'm where I'm meant to be, if that makes sense. Next question, what was the final straw to move? Was it a spontaneous decision? So I obviously have been talking about a lot of the different reasons and factors and things that led up to it. Obviously was not a spontaneous decision. Like I said, my husband and I were trying to plan to relocate. It was just about 6 years before we signed the contract for this house. But I do think the initial conversation between my husband and I was spontaneous. It was kind of like, we should move. We should move to Florida. And everything kind of just like took years to spiral from there. Those conversations, when they started, my husband and I were not necessarily in a place where we could move right away or really start diving into it right away, or even think of moving within that year or a year later. We kind of did make the decision up front, like, this is probably going to have to be a 5-year plan. We had just purchased our home the year before we started having this conversation. And at the time, it felt like that was where we were meant to be. Buying a house and that whole experience and that part of our life and journey at that time felt like that's where we were meant to be in that moment. And then we started having these conversations and I was like, yeah, that would be great And we should think about it and consider it, but also maybe not, right? Like, it was very should we, shouldn't we? And we were kind of continuously having these conversations, and, you know, I would start to look up things and he would start to look up things. And then we started to have, when we knew that we were pretty serious, like, okay, yeah, we definitely want to do this. Not tomorrow, not next year, but we do intend to one day relocate. And my husband and I aren't the type of people who say we're going to do something and not do it. We're very strategic in the way that we have very deep and these like meaningful conversations where we have to ensure we're aligned, we're on the same page. And we were very much on the same page. And we, like I said, we were going to do a 5-year plan to try to make this happen. And then we started telling people, and that's where things got really rocky because no one was supportive. Not a single person. And I'm sure a lot of that just had to do with like, it was family, you know, and kind of, I'm sure their own reasons and whatever, but we felt like there was a lot of projection. We felt like if it's the right move for us, and it's the right move, and we don't really give a shit what other people have to say, right? But what it did do was it stopped us from having conversations with people. So it didn't stop us from wanting to move. It just stopped us from wanting to talk to people about it. So we did. We stopped talking about it. And the funny thing about that is we stopped talking about it. So people thought we didn't want it anymore. And a few years went by. And behind the scenes, John and I were totally serious, and we were doing everything that we had to do when it came to certain savings and ideas, and again, starting to look at areas and talking to our realtor and everything that you have to do. And we told people that we were flying down to Florida, and we only told like our parents knew that we were coming to like a builder's. We didn't tell anybody else. I hinted briefly on like an Instagram story that I was looking for something, and some people were like, wait, what? But unless you were like my best friend, you had no idea, or our parents, like you had no idea. And then we signed a contract, and I posted it online, and everybody was like, wait, what the fuck? And I was like, yep. And now I stand firmly on not talking about your hopes and dreams with people. Straight up. Don't be telling people your next move. You don't need to be telling people shit, regardless of who they are. I don't really care about other people's opinions anymore. I think John and I were a little bit younger, and so we were trying to think like, okay, what do you think? Right? Like, you know, kind of hoping that people would be like, yeah, wait, that's a good idea. And then that didn't happen. And I was like, okay, well, wait, no, I still think it's right. I still want it. So we're still going to go for it. And I think that in turn, unfortunately, and you know, no shade to the people that we were talking to about it, you know, like I said, even our own parents were like, no. I think that was just, you know, the thought of us moving and relocating and them not having access to their grandkids every day, like, you know, I'm sure that plays a part in it. So, you know, no shade to them on that, but it just wasn't what we wanted to hear. So we decided we're not even going to talk about it anymore. So then nobody can tell us what we don't want to hear because it's our decision. And if it's not the right one, we got to live with that. That's on us, but it was. So anyways, you can't make decisions for other people. You got to do what's right for you and your family. And I stand on that. Next question, how is the transition for you or your husband's jobs where you work from home before the move to Florida? I am very blessed in the sense that a lot of the reason that we were able to do this is because I already did work from home. I work for a company that is still based out of Rochester, New York. And we actually were not fully remote. So I started working for this company in 2020, right before the world shut down. This job was not at all work from home. And ironically, and this is why things are funny, and this is why I believe in like the universe and things like that, the job opportunity was unbelievable in comparison to where I was working before. It was a huge opportunity. I had to take it, and I was very excited about it. But when I started with the company, I knew that they were not work from home, and I knew that they were only based out of Rochester. And what's funny about that is the big corporation that I was working for previously did have corporate offices in Florida. And so again, John and I were already considering relocating. And so in the back of my mind, I was thinking I can just transition to the corporate office down in Florida. So when I started with this company, one of the first things that I thought was, well, shit, this could really put a damper in our Florida plans. But again, we still had a few years, and you don't know what can happen in a few years. And so of course that wasn't going to stop me. So I started this position, and then a month after starting, the world shut down and everybody went remote. And since then we've stayed remote. So the corporate office still exists in Rochester, but not a lot of people go to it. And so in January of the year before, we started actually looking into builders and getting serious about, hey, we're going to go start looking into this. I, of course, had the conversation with the owner of the company, who's my boss, and I was like, hey, we want to move to Florida. Are you okay with that? And he was like, yeah, well, I mean, we're already remote, so whatever. And so that was pretty much it. So I am very blessed. I'm very lucky because that was nothing. That was great. My husband, on the other hand, had his own business in New York with his dad, full remodeling, building homes, the whole nine. And we're in a position where I'm lucky enough that my salary essentially covers us. And so my husband was considering working in construction again here, but in a whole different video that I can make, the construction here does not compare to New York. That is a really big difference. And my husband, it's going to sound biased, but it is what it is. He's really good at what he does. He's very, very talented. And the whole reason that my house looks the way it does now in comparison to when we first were moving in has a lot to do with my husband knowing how things have to be done properly and done right. And because the quality isn't the same, the idea of him working for somebody else is not ideal. So we actually started our own company just over a month ago, which I can go into in a different video. But essentially, I didn't want him to have to work for somebody else, especially when he had his own company in New York. I felt like it kind of didn't make sense. I don't think that he could go from being his own boss to working for someone else. We have a new business that we're starting. It's really his baby, but I helped to start it. Next question, what are some major differences between New York and Florida? I could rapid fire this one. Water, big, big difference. I stand by, you need a water filtration system in Florida. If you don't have one, I don't know how you do it. I, however, think it was the proper investment, especially coming from New York. We lived on Lake Ontario, so fresh water. Very much used to that. Totally different in Florida. I needed a water filtration system. My entire house has it. My showers, I can drink from my sink. It's incredible water. I stand by that. To the drivers, completely different. Completely different. Drivers in New York, they are aggressive, yes, but they fucking move and they know the rules of the road. Drivers in Florida are either Uber drivers, tourists, or I'm sorry, but they're dumb. They don't know the rules of the road. They get mad at you. They drive really bizarre. Just absolutely terrible drivers in Florida. I already said this one, but people are so much friendlier here. So much friendlier. I love that. Obviously, weather, huge difference. Those are just off the top of my head. There's definitely more, but those, again, top of my head. Next question is one I actually get a lot, which is, do you feel like the Disney magic is gone since you live so close? My answer is absolutely not. I think what's really interesting is that we do Disney in such a different way, but still in a very similar way. And what I mean by that is when you're planning a vacation, you're trying to get the most out of every second. And even with vacationing here, we started to come so often, multiple times per year, that I started to feel like I could slow down a little bit, which I actually love to do in Disney. I think that there's so much to do in Disney. I always made an effort to ensure that every trip we were doing something entirely new, a new experience, a new dining experience, a new anything, a different resort that we're trying. The list could go on and on because there's so much to do. And I would say that even as a local, I try to do that still, but I try to do it slowly. And that's what I really like. Even if you pay attention in my TikTok videos where I sort of do like a day in the life. Sure, we will go to parks, of course, and the attractions are our favorite. We love riding rides. We're totally riders. I love to make an effort to like try something different to eat, to try a new restaurant. But I love doing slow things. Like the resorts will do movies under the stars, which is not something that we often did during a vacation, but I love it, especially when we go to the boardwalk, because the boardwalk is gorgeous, especially at nighttime. It's such a vibe, and they do movie under the stars, and we will literally go get like a sweet treat from the cake bake shop or get a slice of pizza or whatever, and then just go sit on the grass and watch a movie on a random Wednesday night. I think, frankly, there's nothing more magical than that. I think everyone has their thing that brings them a sense of escapism, and for my husband and I, it's always been Disney. That's why we were constantly coming here on vacation, because we had real life shit going on. You know, we are young parents. We have 2 kids, and we owned our home in New York, and we have family shit, and you just have life shit, you know? Like there was always something going on. And I think that having the ability to escape that, even for a second, even for a short while, is so important. It doesn't have to be Disney for everyone. It could be anything. People go to the beach and they do week vacations at beaches, or they have timeshares and they do that, or they fly to a different country and experience a different culture, which I also want to do. But I'm just saying, right? Like it's sort of a sense of you're escaping that routine everyday something. And for us, it's just Disney. It's just always been Disney. And I don't really feel like I have to like necessarily explain that, especially to probably any of you watching, because if you're watching this video, you probably watch my content and you like Disney, so you might get it. But I feel like for us, it's always been like that. And even in Florida, life is still life. I still have to work and I have a stressful job. And I mean, if anything, life is more chaotic, right? We relocated and my kids are in a totally different school and there's new friends and they're getting older, and John and I are getting older, and I started doing content, which I freaking love so much. You guys don't even understand. I think that there's constantly something going on. And so this sense of escapism is so magical in and of itself. So I've always said this, and I truly believe it, whether you're a local or not, Disney's magic comes from you. You can say that that's corny, but it's the truth. It's up to you how magical that trip is going to be. You know what I mean? It's up to you how magical that day is going to be. It's all about perspective, and perspective is reality. So you can shape your reality based off of how you're perceiving something. And if I walk into Disney with a positive attitude and I know it's going to be the most magical day on the face of the earth, it's going to be, period. Nothing's going to get in the way. And so the magic doesn't go away unless you let it go away. So don't let the magic go away. And then it doesn't matter if you go to Disney once a year, once in a lifetime, or once a day, once a week, right? The magic is you. That probably sounds like okay, but it's true. It's so true. Okay, last question. Has it been hard to make friends in Florida? Kind of, but let me elaborate. It's also one of the reasons that I have gotten so serious about content creation. So I'll really elaborate here. First, I got really, really lucky. I feel so very grateful and blessed because our next door neighbors that moved in are oddly from New York, our age, and I'm very comfortable with them. Very comfortable. We clicked instantly. That doesn't often happen to me. And I think that that has made a huge impact, because you go from having absolutely no one, absolutely nothing, to they have a key to my house, I have a key to their house, and that's not something I've ever done before. That level of trust is like crazy, right? So that was purely luck. On the opposite side of that, I feel like, I have these conversations with my husband often, I feel like maybe it's, and I want to make sure that I articulate this in the right way. I feel like my personality, and maybe it's because of where I'm from, which is very likely because I do feel like it's more common that I'm going to be around people that kind of maybe talk like me or act like me or whatever. Like it's not off-putting, right? I have an aggressive tone typically when I speak. I feel like for the most part it's at bay, but like if I'm really comfortable with you and we're having a conversation, I talk with my hands. Whether I'm excited, mad, happy, sad, like I'm always doing this. I'm always talking with my hands. And I can talk loud, and I swear a lot. I swear a lot. So if I'm comfortable with you, it's just like that. And I have this like dynamic where like I don't have time or patience for bullshit. So like if I clock something, likely I'm gonna remove myself from the table, but I'm gonna say something first probably, depending on the situation. And I think that my fear has always been people won't understand that. People won't necessarily like that. People won't be used to that. And so I think my fear is I will scare people, because I feel like there's not really a better way for me to phrase that. And so with that, I like to be myself off the jump because it'll weed it out. I will never pretend to be something that I'm not. You will never catch me putting up a front. I am exactly who I am. And either you love me or you don't. And I'm at a point in my life where if you don't, it's all good. It's all good. I have had way too many friendships. I have had way too many experiences in my life with people who are judgmental, are not great people, and the type of people that will call you their best friend or call the next person their best friend, and then that person gets up from the table and they're immediately talking shit. I don't have time for stuff like that. I don't tolerate it. I won't put up with people like that. I also have been around too many people that are so miserable in their own lives. And again, I think this is sort of an issue that I had in New York is just, again, I feel like everybody was constantly miserable. I am not a miserable person. I'm very glass half full. And so I feel like it's hard to come across people who aren't miserable and who won't project shit onto you and who want to clap for you and want to see you do well and all of the things. And I want real relationships, and I want people in my life that truly give a shit about me and aren't trying to be in my life to use me or get something out of me. And I feel like that has been my experience for so long and time again that it sort of makes me not want to bring people into my life because I'm so sick of the drama or having to be around people that are just so constantly pessimistic about friggin' everything. And so that part is hard. And I think that is why I have really loved building this community through social media, because you don't understand that the comments that you guys send me, the DMs that you guys send me, the conversations that we have, I love it. I love the sense of community. I love the fact that you guys are watching me go to Disney and talking to me about it, or that you guys are interested in the fact that I just switched from Nespresso to Breville and asking me, how do I like my new coffee machine? Or that we have conversations where you tell me about your next Disney trip or whatever. I think the sense of community is something that I yearn for because I don't have it. And I think that it makes this really, really special, and I love it so much. And it brings me so much joy. And so thank you guys for being a part of it and for consistently watching my reels or my TikToks or my YouTube videos and commenting and interacting, because it brings me such joy and warmth, and it means so much to me, especially like the people that are constantly DMing me or like constantly commenting. Like, I know who you are. Like, it's cool. I don't know. I love it. And yeah, so thank you for asking all of these questions. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. Hopefully I answered your questions. I'm sure that there are more questions that you can ask, especially with more experience or experience of me living here or things that I go through here. I know a lot of people are looking to relocate, whether it's to Florida or a totally different state, and I feel like talking to people about it and sort of getting their experiences are helpful and beneficial, because I do feel like I was looking for it a lot on TikTok, especially before I moved, and I didn't really see a whole lot of it. And so I would love to be that type of person for you guys. So thank you again for all of your support. I love you all so, so, so much. You guys mean so much to me. And that's all for now. So I'll see you on Monday when the next video comes out.